Welcome back to The Deep Dive. So every December, you hear the sleigh bells, the choruses kick in, and you might just think, oh, it's just that time of year again.
Mhm.
But if you actually, peel back the layers on holiday music, especially Christmas songs, you find something so much richer.
You really do. They're not just background noise.
No, they're like a profound cultural mirror.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
I mean, if you trace the timeline of Christmas hits from, say, the 1950s up until today, they reflect every single major shift.
In what? In technology?
In our media technology, yeah, but also in our social themes. You see this move from a universal family focus to something like hyper-specific urban romance.
Right.
And fundamentally, it tracks the business model of the music industry itself.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive. We want to show you that the way we listen fundamentally changes the kind of music that artists even choose to create.
The medium is the message, right?
Right, totally. It dictates not just the sound quality, but the whole emotional contract the song is making with you, the listener. So we're going to trace that evolution, decade by decade.
From the days of network radio.
Right, all the way to the hyper-personalized algorithms of Spotify and, TikTok.
Precisely. We're tracing this cultural artifact, the Christmas song, from that analog era of records and radio, where you had these centralized tastemakers telling everyone what the hits were.
Yeah.
All the way into the digital era, where it's individual consumption and virality that hold all the power.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of this modern era, the 1950s. This was like the blueprint.
It really was.
You've got post-war economic stability, the rise of that idealized nuclear family, and radio and TV are just cementing this shared national culture. What does the music sound like in that kind of environment?
It sounds warm, it sounds safe and universal. The whole blueprint for the modern holiday hit was really defined by this idealized nostalgia.
Home, family.
Exactly. Home, family, winter scenery. And it was all shaped by the technical limitations and the aesthetic needs of radio and vinyl records.
And the classic that really set that standard, even though it came out a bit earlier in '42, was Bing Crosby's White Christmas.
Its lasting power is just extraordinary. And it's partly because it's so perfectly captured that idealized, post-World War II American yearning for peace and home.
And what about the sound itself?
Technically, it relies on that classic big band arrangement and that style heavy on the brass, sweeping strings, high-quality analog recording. That's crucial.
Why?
Because it conveys warmth, it conveys spectacle, a sense of shared communal experience. It's an arrangement that fills an entire room and just feels expensive.
Which matches the economic optimism of the time.
Totally.
Then you see a slightly different shade of that same warmth with Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song a few years later in 1950.
Right. While Crosby was all about spectacle, Cole introduced these more subtle jazz elements.
It's more intimate.
Much more intimate. It's focused on scenes like gathering by the fireplace, chestnuts roasting.
Yeah.
So it kept the warmth, but scaled down the spectacle for a closer, cozier feel.
But still using those real physical instruments.
That's a key distinction, yes. Both use analog acoustic instruments to give you that sense of genuine physical warmth, making you feel safe and kind of enveloped.
And you even had traditional religious music getting folded into pop radio.
We did. A great example is the Harry Simeone Chorale's 1963 version of Little Drummer Boy. It took a traditional church element and successfully mass-marketed it through the pop radio format. The foundation was set. Warmth, safety, universality.
Okay, but that couldn't last forever. By the 70s, society is liberalizing, club culture is booming, and the focus shifts from that quiet, shared home to a more adult social experience. Was there any pushback to that? Did people feel like disco was, violating the sanctity of Christmas?
There was some gradual resistance, sure, but the shift was undeniable, and it was completely media-driven. As radio formats got more targeted and the 12-inch vinyl format allowed for longer dance-focused tracks, the music just had to change.
So the 70s gave us the first big genre fusion.
Yes. In 1976, Vincent Montana Jr.'s album Christmas Jollies was an absolute landmark. It just mashed up Christmas themes with disco and soul.
So the fireplace becomes the dance floor.
Exactly.
What are the hallmarks of that new sound?
It's all about lavish production. Think huge orchestrated strings, big horn sections, and that driving four-on-the-floor beat. This was not quiet music for reflection.
No, this is active, celebratory.
Adult-oriented music, yeah. Christmas Jollies is such a vital historical marker because it proved that holiday music could be danceable and focused on a party instead of just family time. It really set the stage for the R&B and the high-polished synth pop that would dominate the next couple of decades.
Okay, so that lavishness laid the groundwork, but then the 1980s, that's when things get really polished, right?
The 80s took that spectacle and distilled it into the precise, polished, and globally scalable sound of synth pop. This is the decade where the template for the modern holiday repertoire was really set in stone.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the 80s permanently shifted the core theme of Christmas songs.
It is.
It moves away from that universal, warm family ideal of the 50s and goes toward this very specific, often melancholy, urban romance.
That's the key shift.
But why did audiences suddenly go for that? A theme like unrequited love seems so specific and kind of sad for Christmas.
Well, it was a reflection of media saturation and, frankly, demographic reality.
Yeah.
Young urban professionals became the key consumer group, so their experiences, isolation, city life, different dating patterns, that became the new subject matter.
So the analog warmth of the 50s gets replaced by the digital clarity of the synthesizer.
Exactly, a much colder, more polished sound.
And globally, the song that just defined this has to be Wham's Last Christmas from 1984.
A perfect example of sound meeting theme. Last Christmas uses all those prevailing synth pop sounds, digital drums, that prominent synth bass line, and often a minor key synth pad today, just embody that feeling of heartbroken longing.
The sound itself is cold.
It is. It's polished, and it's slightly distant, which perfectly complements the lyrics about a specific romantic failure. It's so memorable precisely because it's not universal joy. It's universal sadness, just wrapped in a holiday setting.
Its endurance is incredible, and it really relies on constant covers and remixes to keep it fresh for every new media cycle.
It does.
Though we should probably mention that wasn't the only sound. You had tracks like John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Happy Xmas, War is Over from 1980.
Right, so songs with strong social messages could also find a space in this era.
But the romantic urban thing is what really stuck.
It's what solidified the biggest long-term repertoire, yes. And we have to look beyond just the global charts to see how media strategy locked in local standards.
You're talking about Japan.
Specifically, Tatsuro Yamashita's Christmas Eve from 1983.
That song is an absolute staple there. But for listeners who might not be familiar, can you break down its genre and its cultural role?
Sure. Yamashita's song falls right into the genre known as AOR, or album-oriented rock, and it's often grouped with city pop.
Which defined that 80s Japanese economic boom.
It did. It's all about polished, sophisticated pop with jazz and R&B influences focused heavily on affluent urban themes. Christmas Eve is just pure urban winter scenery and romance in the city.
And its status was cemented by more than just the music itself, right? You mentioned commercial tie-ins.
Crucially, yes. Its status as a Japanese winter staple was driven by sustained, heavy radio airplay and these incredibly successful commercial tie-ins, which they call CMs in Japan.
So TV ads.
Major television ad campaigns, yeah. Usually for high-end chocolate or train lines. They made sure the song was just inescapable from late November on. That consistent media play established it as a national standard just as powerful as Wham was internationally.
So the 80s really proved the formula.
It proved that if you had a polished, synth-driven romantic track and a brilliant media strategy, you could create a permanent piece of the holiday canon.
Which brings us to the 1990s and, well, the ultimate gold standard of modern holiday pop.
Mariah
Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You from 1994. This song didn't just inherit the 80s mantle, it fundamentally rewrote the template.
It took the disco and soul foundation from the 70s and the romance theme from the 80s and just turbocharged it.
With 90s R&B and pop production.
Yeah, its impact is singular. The key characteristics are a complete shift to romance-centered lyrics like Forget the Snow, I Only Want You, a powerful fusion of R&B and pop, and maybe most importantly, that technical innovation of vocal multi-tracking.
Oh, that vocal stacking is iconic. It gives the song this massive, joyous sound that the 80s tracks couldn't quite get. It feels warm like the 50s, but also really slick and modern.
Exactly. Mariah Carey used her incredible vocal range and modern studio tech to create these complex harmonies that just sound overwhelmingly celebratory. It's a sonic maximalism that set the bar for every pop diva holiday track that came after.
And this was a global thing.
It was. Interestingly, Japan saw a parallel moment with the reevaluation of Yumi Matsutoya's earlier track, Koibito ga Santa Claus. Mm. The global pop culture was unifying around this R&B-infused, technologically advanced romance.
That desire for new sounds leads us right into the 2000s, which feels like an era of, I don't know, digital chaos.
That's a good way to put it.
You said the decade was defined by genre diversification, R&B, acoustic versions, club mixes.
And that diversification was entirely media-driven. The 2000s saw the explosion of MP3s, the iPod, and that first really disruptive wave of digital distribution like iTunes.
Right, before this, radio and record stores basically curated your experience.
And now, you could curate your own personalized playlist. The power of traditional radio to dictate one single global standard, like Last Christmas or Mariah, it just started to wane.
Because we were all making our own playlists.
That's the critical insight. When radio's power went down and everything became digitally accessible, the market needed new ways to stand out. And this just accelerated the huge proliferation of covers and remakes of classic tunes.
So if you can't beat the Mariah template with a new song,
You just refresh a Bing Crosby track with a contemporary R&B or, an acoustic arrangement. Digital platforms blurred the lines between old and new because they were all just files waiting to be played. It led to a decade that was really dominated by reimagining the past.
which brings us to today's media landscape. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and of course the big one, TikTok.
The engine of viral content.
This is where consumption dictates creation in a way we've never seen before.
The whole commercial strategy today is almost entirely centered on streaming performance and social media engagement. This new environment favors the constant automated circulation and rediscovery of the existing hits.
The catalog.
The established catalog, yes, right alongside new releases. The algorithm is the new tastemaker, but it is heavily, heavily biased toward familiarity.
And this is where we see virality just accelerate the reevaluation of classic tracks. You'll see some like minor B-side from the 70s or a cover of a classic suddenly blow up on TikTok.
Because someone used a sped up or a slowed down version for a dance challenge or something.
Exactly.
The ability of these platforms to resurrect or boost existing catalog tracks is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And virality isn't an accident anymore. It's a strategy. It's tied to maximizing the number of minutes streamed.
And we saw this get cemented even further during the pandemic.
We did, with virtual events and online concerts becoming the main delivery system for holiday culture. Basically, if a song is playlist-friendly and clip-friendly, it wins.
Which raises a really important question about, new music. If the algorithm is constantly pushing the familiar big hits, Mariah won out, Nat King Cole, how can a brand new song, which has no streaming history, possibly break through to become a new standard?
The system is rigged. It's rigged in favor of the established repertoire. The financial value of those existing mega hits is so massive that the platforms and labels have every incentive to just keep them cycling. It takes an extraordinary combination of a great original song, strategic playlisting, and pure viral luck for a newcomer to displace a track like All I Want for Christmas Is You.
So what does all this mean for you listening at home? We've traced this pretty dramatic trajectory. We went from pop songs centered on the universal ideal of home in the 50s, through the standardization of this melancholy urban romance on synth pop in the 80s, and now we're completely in the world of streaming hits, all about virality, instant access, and that continuous loop of what already exists.
It's a concise cultural history lesson.
It really is.
And I think the key insight is that our current landscape is one of simultaneous coexistence.
Yeah.
The analog warmth of the 50s lives right next to the digital polish of the 90s on your Spotify playlist.
And local standards persist.
Right, things like city pop in Japan persist because of cultural inertia, while the global behemoths just dominate through algorithmic strategy.
Yeah.
It's the evolution of commercial strategy that continues to fundamentally reshape music culture.
It's incredible to think that every time you hear one of those familiar songs, you're hearing the ghost of a past media landscape, whether that was a vinyl record, FM radio, or an early MP3.
And that leads us to a final provocative thought for you to consider. Given this constant recirculation and algorithmic boosting of Last Christmas and All I Want for Christmas Is You, is the era of independent cultural standardization over?
Meaning, can a new song even become a classic anymore?
Exactly. Will the current digital landscape allow any newly released Christmas song to achieve the same kind of lasting independent cultural power that radio and physical media created in the 80s and 90s? Or will the algorithm simply guarantee that only the music of the past continues to define the holiday future? Something to mull over the next time you hear those iconic synth bells chime.